Well, Susie Tomenchok, welcome to Dominate Your Day. It's so good to see you and can't wait to see you in person in a couple weeks. But I have been following you and your messaging. Not only are you a strengths coach, but I've enjoyed how you're really writing about negotiations. And as I looked at your LinkedIn and looked at all the things you've done, I was like, wow, she's done some
Thanks.
interesting things. So,
Thank
welcome to our
you.
show. Our audience is excited to have you here. And we just want to hear a little bit about your journey because we're all about difference makers making an impact. And you're one of
Oh,
those
I
people.
love
So,
that. I
welcome,
just love
welcome.
that because my mission is making an impact for people, and part of that is the negotiator mindset, because I think that I'll give you the bottom line is, and I'll tell the story around it
Yeah.
is, I really believe that we're better humans, we're better friends, we're better colleagues, we're better leaders when we think about how we approach different situations as if you were a negotiator. And framing your ask and being clear where you're going, anchoring your ideas, all of those things are that mindset that negotiators use. And it came from, I was in a corporate executive, and I owned business development, owned a team of people that did sales. And found myself in the boardroom really negotiating big deals, and had to learn how to do that. I didn't have the experience, but I kept getting more and more. They kept giving me more and more because I was successful. And I think it had to do with building rapport and relationship and those things, and understanding the interests of the other party. But what really struck me was negotiation continues on outside of that boardroom. My colleague, Dan,
Mm.
who I talk about a lot, is, he would ask for everything. At one point, he even asked that my team report to him because we had great results. It'd make him look good. He asked that I report to him. He asked for the parking space, the bigger office, everything. And what I realized is they would give him whatever he needed. And when they had the meeting before the meeting about our compensation or the things they were going to give us, they always considered his interest because he would push back.
Mm.
But Susie would just take what we gave her. She would, and that was true as the path of least resistance. And I really realized that that was really powerful. And at home, three girls growing up,
Mhm.
and they
Mm.
learned how to negotiate against me. I didn't even realize it was happening in Target. Relationship, who has relationship equity, what is timing, who's going to frame the ask, like all those things. And I just realized that having a voice and just being clear about what you want and moving forward is so powerful. So how can I help people find that voice to advocate for themselves? And now seeing my daughters in their 20s, my oldest is in her 30s now, and they're all three very successful professionals. And I can see those seeds that I planted very early on and how they navigate and negotiate in their everyday.
I love that story. I have one daughter and she has four
Wow.
daughters. Can you believe that? And yeah, from one daughter. And I think I learned about how when kids are in junior high, they start
Mhm.
negotiating. That's why we put them in classes where they can really
Yeah.
debate because it is a
Yes. Yes.
negotiation, right? So how cool that you were able to apply it at home and at work. I also like how you talked about yourself in the third person in that frame of your
Mm.
life. And Susie would take
Yeah.
what she got. Um, why do you think most executive women are not confident in their
Oh,
negotiation skills?
well, we all have a different relationship with that word negotiation. And it's like
Yeah.
we've had a bad experience, or it feels like I have to become Dan, if you will. I have to become that guy,
Mhm,
that car salesman, or somebody that is really
mhm,
being manipulative. And I really want people to see that differently. Like when I say to you, let's negotiate our priorities. When you think about it like that, I'm saying, what's important to you? Let me give you the microphone
mhm.
too, and how we look at that. And I think that women, especially, I work with a lot of women that dilute their message. They say, well, I know I'm not the smartest person, or I don't have a lot of experience here. Like it's almost like we show our work. We're proud of the fact that we've done
Mhm.
all the prep, and we want to frame it so that we have a lot of empathy for the other side. And I think it's just important to think about how you're framing who you are to the person in front of you. And people don't live in our heads. They don't live around the value we provide every day. So framing that for them helps them make great decisions about where to place you, what opportunities to give to you when you need, more resources. But we shouldn't just wait for that to come. Don't be the path of least resistance. Why not, let your voice be heard? Even if it's a no, at least they know you care.
So let's talk about what that would look like. But I want to talk about what that would look like because I think a lot of people are hearing framing and going, "What? Well,
Yeah.
what's that?" They're hearing some of
Yeah.
these tools, right? But you had to kind of get out there and figure this out yourself as you were rising from executive to now business owner and
Absolutely.
coach. How did
Yeah.
you figure it out? And then how did you build a
Yeah,
model?
a lot of it was observation. Some of the best ways to be a great negotiator is just to pay attention, because we get so stuck in what
Mhm.
we wanna say or what our position is, but understanding what's going on around. So I recognized what worked for other people, but then very shortly had to find resources and study, and I got really curious about this whole thing that's negotiation, because it's really a relationship dance, and it's super interesting to me.
Mm.
And so that's where I had to really build my skills, because I wanted to be successful, and be respected. And so I wanted to do it
Mm.
differently, and I found that both can be true, and both can be, the only people that we negotiate with that we're not gonna have a long-term relationship is probably the car guy. Otherwise, there's people in our everyday that we negotiate with, so it's all about the relationship.
So when did you have that aha moment or that I want to make an impact, I'm not making an impact. I figure this out. I can sell, I can I can get in the boardroom and have these conversations. But when did you kind of tell the Dan it was time to go on and you were going to be doing this? How did that
Yeah.
happen?
Um, I remember somebody that had worked for me years before. I didn't realize I had had any impact on them, but she had told me, just in a catch up conversation, I want to find a leader that's like you, that taught me so much and
Mm.
was able to give me feedback that I trusted, because I knew you wanted me to be better. And that piece of data about me was something I didn't know. So it kind of clicked for me about, ooh, I have a superpower around that. Let me listen more for that.
Mhm.
And so that was one of the clues for me to go, "Oh, that's really interesting." And how can I, as I started talking to people, so I wrote a book about negotiation, and I often get friends who say, "Hey, can you talk to this executive about a executive level position they're going for and help them negotiate?" And that's not actually what I do for a living, but I'm like, "Sure, I'll help out." And I met this woman only via phone. Zoom wasn't big then, and talked to her 3 times. And the last time I talked to her, she's like, "Oh, slow down. Everything you're saying about framing this up is so valuable. I'm writing down everything you say. You should write a book." And I was like, in my head, I'm just kind of like, I have self assurance. I'm like, I'm not even a reader. And I was like, okay, I'm going to write a book. And pretty soon
Mhm.
I was writing a book. And I think that experience, so when the book was done, I reached out to her on LinkedIn. I had to find her on LinkedIn. I hadn't talked to her for years. And I'm like, "I wanna send you one of my books. You inspired me." She's like, "What?"
Oh
And
my
so,
goodness.
like, we have
Yeah.
impact on people around us and we don't even know. And I really believe that we need to show up every day. And so her one comment inspired me to do something that was super just out of my zone of what I thought was possible. But that little spark, like, led me somewhere completely different, into a whole different life experience. So, I look for those clues from people, and I allow that, um, curiosity to fuel my path sometimes.
And it's living into your authenticity. And so how did you find that? How did you find that unique authenticity? If you hadn't have taken
Yeah.
that call and you said, "Yeah, I don't really do this, but I'll talk to her," you wouldn't have had that moment. But how did you find your sweet spot and this authentic career
Yeah.
for yourself?
Yeah. I I think I'm gonna go on the same theme around observing. I remember I spoke for a group of people, and there was a lot of technical issues, and it was on a big stage, and the COO was talking to me, and she was telling me about a conversation she had with the CEO, and they were talking about the tech issues, and that kind of tripped everybody up. And they said, but not Susie, because she's a professional. And I remember thinking, oh my gosh, they think I'm a professional speaker. Like I didn't feel like a professional speaker, but that's how they saw me. And so I think those
Mm,
moments of reflection help you see yourself in a way that you need
mhm,
to, kind of like that shift. And so that's how I found my authenticity, because then I had to believe that I was able to transfer my message to a group of people, and I didn't realize it was landing until I started hearing that it was. And then I just had to have the self-belief that I had this ability to make that connection. And then on top of
mm,
that, when as a strengths coach, I always, when I present around the strength stuff, it's science based. It's like there's all this research. There's so much you can stand behind. And when I was facilitating my content, it felt like, oh my gosh, this is my stuff. Like it's not backed by all this.
mhm,
And I actually got hypnotized. Not related to this, but what I found was I needed to see this in my stuff in the wild and see how it's
mm,
affecting people and impacting people, and look for those clues of evidence. And once I did, I
mm.
was like, this is really good stuff. These people are saying this is changing my life. You need to believe in yourself.
So so what mindset shifts? You talk a lot about we talk about the negotiation mindset, but this is a mindset on
Yeah.
yourself, right? When you're finding that true authentic self, what shifts did you have to make to truly step
Yeah.
into that?
I think that I really it sounds so simple, but whenever I'm feeling not secure, or I'm having imposter syndrome that we all talk about, and I'm not feeling like,
Yeah.
I feel like, why me? Like what difference can I make in front of this group of people? I think about some of those comments that people have said to me, or that my message is important, or somebody who said to me, oh my gosh, because of how you taught me this, this is the impact it's had on me. And allow that to fuel, okay, just put it all on the table, leave it all on the stage. And I know that sounds like I'm being like, I'm not trying to sound like, I'm just so amazing, but that's really kind of the mindset shifts that I have to make in my own head to give myself the confidence
Mhm.
that I am enough. And
Mhm.
it's not a turn the dial and click it's on and suddenly it's just on or off. It's something that is always something I have to finesse.
Mhm. It's a
Yeah.
daily work, right? I mean, I think even with both of us coaching with strengths, with Clifton Strengths, there's just you can't just get your strengths and be done with it. It's how are you applying? So how did your strengths play a role in this
Yeah.
transformation for you?
I and you and I were talking about my top 5, and how as I've
Yeah.
got
Why don't you share
yeah,
those
so
with the audience?
I
Yeah,
have
share that.
a number 1 adaptability, relator, self-assurance, woo,
Mhm.
and futuristic. And I'm so proud that self-assurance does not often find itself in the top 5, and I almost like just that data about that just makes me excited, because it makes me feel really unique in what I bring. And I feel like I've evolved, like I've really understood what those were when they were first introduced to me, but then living with them, 25 years later, I was just saying last week, I had a huge discovery around my adaptability and why adaptability is so good in for what I do. And it kind of blows my mind every time I think about the combination of those, and how that is truly the superpower of Susie Tomenchok, because I'm uniquely me, as you are uniquely you.
Mhm. How did you when you heard like you said, you've been doing it for 25
Yeah.
years, right?
Plus,
Is that what
I'm just gonna say
you've been doing
plus.
strength?
Yeah.
Wow, that you were an early adopter to that. So when you started doing strengths and then you've kind of been
Mhm.
applying, then you start your business and then you're consulting. And then all of a sudden you have an aha moment, you said last
Yeah.
week. What was that with your adaptability? Because I it's fun for me to even ask you questions because I don't it won't bother you because 'cause I'll just throw a zinger and you're like, "Okay."
Yeah.
What
Yeah.
right? So what
Yeah.
was that with the
So I
adaptability that you
couldn't like I've done some of the same workshops with people on my content, but I'm always trying to rejigger it and make it better and really think about it. It drives me crazy because it's not like a, you know, I'm always iterating around it before I move into it. And I was talking to a good friend, Micah Librant, who's a strengths expert, and I love her.
yeah.
And she said, you know, what's happening is your adaptability is like ready to be unleashed. And before you get in front of the people, you're just like have all this energy and you're kind of waiting to get there. And you'll be fine in the moment and
Mm,
you'll feel like very calm and collected because you'll be there. But your adaptability doesn't know what to do with itself with all of this before you get there. So it's trying to plan and pull it all together, but it doesn't have like the faces yet to be in the moment. And I was like, oh
wow.
my gosh, it was huge.
Yeah. Do you think that woo plays into it too? Because the adaptability and the woo kinda and then the
Yes,
futuristic of, "Okay, what does the room look like? How many people will be
absolutely.
there?" And
Absolutely,
picturing
because my woo
everything.
wants to also know
So
who the people are there and connecting with them, and
mhm.
I always say I have a woo hangover because if I don't get to talk to every person, it feels like
I love
a
that.
missed opportunity, and I often will get in front of
Yeah,
crowds and say, like, "I know you're all engineers and you're more introverted, but nonverbals are really, really helpful to me," and it's so funny to watch these, like, very intentional acts of nonverbal, and I know that they're cheering me on. And it's like telling somebody,
isn't that
"This is what I
amazing?
need," and they do it, and you're like,
Yeah,
"Oh my gosh." So that connection with the people that you're with, so powerful as leaders. We need to be vulnerable enough to say, "Listen, my woo needs this. My adaptability needs to be here with you."
mhm.
Like, whatever that is, that's so powerful because then that person can meet you where you are.
Yeah. And then all of a sudden, you've got a good handle on what the audience is feeling and thinking and doing without having all the
Yeah.
verbal cues. You've got all the action cues. So, yeah, so when you work, whether you're doing a speaking engagement, facilitating strings, or helping with negotiation, your negotiation mindset tool, tell us a story of a transformation. It might have been with a client, it might have been with a team, like a group of people like that. It could have been with um, somebody that you were close with, and it could have been a family member. But just using those talents, can you share a story of you went when you kind of went, "Oh my gosh, that was
Yeah.
incredible." I got to feel, and you mentioned
Yeah.
that a little bit when you were speaking, and you were in the wild speaking, and it was like, wow, okay. So what's coming up for you about that? What is a story or something you'd like to share that kind of just gave you that we've created a new file here, and I
Yeah.
can do this,
I
and
talk to teams about
this is
high stakes situations are not a laminated list that we all go to. It's not always just buying a house, buying a car, like these situations. High stakes is very personal. High stakes for me when I was a
mm,
corporate executive was a meeting that Dan was there because I didn't like to share openly as much because I didn't have high trust. High stakes can
mm,
be a conversation with your child or teenager, or for me, 20-year-old that you've been putting off. As a leader, could be
mm.
somebody that you have to give, constructive criticism to, and they're very defensive, and it's very difficult to do. So high stakes is very personal. So I facilitated a team and talking about this and advocating for one another by, you know, making their point, asking questions when they're presenting those things. And this woman goes, "We need to advocate for one another more." And another woman stood up and
Mm,
said, when I said, "What's high stakes for you?" And evidently she doesn't speak up much. And in a room of 50 people of her peers and above, she said, "What's high stakes for me is when I have to go to a meeting and I'm the only person from our organization that's represented. And there's all these other people that are just
mm,
riddling me with questions." And I thought, what a
mm.
great voice to say, can come with me to that meeting, whatever that needs to be.
Mm,
And then one other example, last week I was with a group of senior women in technology, and I talked about framing. You asked me about framing. I think framing is really
mm,
powerful. It's really being clear about what you want and framing your ask in a way that gets the other party to see it from your view. And I think especially women dilute our message by framing in things about us because we feel like it's a way to show our vulnerability. Like, I don't have that much experience in this, so but here's my question. Or um, I know we just met, but, and it's almost like we're getting you ready for. And I told this woman, I said, don't frame that in. Just go right with your point
mhm,
because we hear it from our
mm,
lens, but they hear it from theirs. So they're not judging our
mm.
language. We can be stronger, match the person who's in front of you. And she was like, she wrote me a note saying, I think I'm going to use framing in everything I do. And that was such a powerful message to me to make sure that my message is framed in the way I want it to be. And so, oh my gosh, that's just what keeps me going.
Yeah. No, and that's so exciting because you gave them in both situations, you taught them about high stakes and how to have high stakes conversations, and then also how to frame. What would be a general rule of thumb when framing of a to do and not to do? Because we don't want to talk about, oh, you're probably not going to really have the answer to this, and I shouldn't be
Yes.
asking you, but I mean that's a bad framing, right? So what's a good
Yes.
framing?
So, so when we prepare, so the big thing about negotiations, you should prepare. And sometimes we feel like we should tell, the whole story. And I'll tell you here's a good example. I have a friend who was given a promotion. He was a SVP and he was given a C-level job, and he's a negotiator. And he's the one that taught me about framing. His name is Michael. And the CEO came to him and said, I want to give you a ton more money. I'm going to give you a bigger job and a bigger title. And Michael always asks for time. And he said, thank you, but can I consider it? And he said that he went back and he thought about it. And the person he was replacing, he would do more than that person. And that person over time had earned a lot more money than what was being offered. But he had been with the company 30 years. So there was a reason why. He knew that he and the CEO both had the same data set. But he went back to the CEO and he framed that piece of information outside. So instead of saying, hey, I appreciate the offer. And I know that Hal had been here 30 years, and that's why you're not going to pay me the same. But I would really like some more money. Instead, he said, you know what, I appreciate the offer, and I'm really excited about the opportunity. What really bugs me is I know you didn't respect Hal, and he was making more than me. So if you could give me as much as Hal was making, that would make me feel like you really respected me at the same level, at least, of Hal. And it wasn't like he
Mm,
was saying anything dishonest. He was just careful how he framed it to get to the answer. And we tend to want to give everybody everything, but good decisions are made by being really clear about what you want and asking that. And so
mm.
framing it is framing your ask in a way that's going to help the other person understand and get to the end that you want them to.
What a great story. And I love how you shared how he talked about it from his
Mhm.
perspective. This is what I
Yes.
need. This is how I feel instead of you make me
Yes.
feel. And I thought and so his framing was very
Yes.
positive and focused on his
Mhm.
unique needs, which I think is something we always want to I always say, it's internal. So what do you need? But going outside in it. So I love that framing. That is awesome. So as you think through, since you got
Yeah.
futuristic, I'm going to ask you a little futuristic thing here. What do you think is going on with leaders right now? What is the future of leadership right now in today's workplace, and what do
Yeah.
they need in terms of negotiation and leading? And I know we've got the strengths tool we both use, but what do you think that is important for leaders to think about as we think about the future?
Yeah, I think there's 2 things that come to mind for me. One is I think there's just been so much when you think about the needs of followers. There's been so much
Yes.
disruption, there's so much lack of hope, as we know, stability when there's
Mhm.
changes in the organization, trust amongst people when those things happen. All of those things are hampered in one way or the other. So I see people trying to do a lot with less. And so
Mm,
motivation is a factor,
mm,
priorities. How do you help people prioritize and really stay focused on what's important to them and to the business? And how do you lead
mhm,
through that with compassion?
mm,
Well, with compassion, with hope, providing stability and
mhm,
building
mm,
trust along the way. And so I think motivation,
mm,
that's hard. And really I see a lot of trends around. There was a lot of leadership that big companies would go out to their executives for them to take, and then they come back. And I feel like they want to
mm,
experience that together so they become a more cohesive unit, that they're all speaking the same
mm.
language. And I think a lot of that has to do with, like, some of the things I talk about. Of course, I'm gonna talk about those things, like art of influence, emotional agility, situational awareness, and being really mindful of how you
Mhm.
show up, but how you show up in different situations to drive toward that best outcome.
Can we talk about emotional
Yeah.
agility for a minute? What is emotional agility? How do you define that? Because we hear about emotional intelligence and we hear about, okay, you're a leader, you need to be agile. What is emotional
Yeah,
agility
so
to
I
you?
think a lot about personalities, emotion, positivity, negativity. So when I think about emotional agility, we all know that, or the research shows, I shouldn't say we all know, research shows that emotions cloud our thinking. And we often think that means
Mm,
anger or frustration or nervousness, but it really is also joy and excitement and surprise. Really gives us a layer of fog. It's proven
mm,
in research. And so having emotional agility to me is being able to identify when something in the moment can become high stakes. You know, you could be running a meeting and suddenly a senior person walks in and just sits down. And suddenly this low
mm,
stakes staff meeting is like high stakes just like that, and you don't know why that person's
mm,
there, or what's their mission, or why are they just going to be
mhm,
quiet. And so being able to in the moments identify, okay, I have a lot of excitement right now, I need to, like, not don't make any decisions right now, let me get in an objective
mhm,
state. Or, okay, Dan's in the room, he's frustrating me, I'm triggered,
mhm,
I need to give myself some time to get as objective as I can to make the right decision right now. So that's what emotional agility
mm,
is to me, is to be able to
mm,
understand yourself well enough to know that you need to, like, here's the moment, and then be really
mhm.
cognizant, even if you have to continue on, to make thoughtful choices to move you through.
I think that's a great. I think there's so much of
Mhm.
self-management that as we're looking at those triggers and how do we know we've been learning how to overcome them when that happens again and it doesn't
Yes.
trigger us, right? So it's like, okay, oh, that one just came up. Whoa. I'm helping my mom pack right now. They're moving. And it's like all these triggers with the
Yes.
family and packing and triggers with the sisters. And I'm like, ah. So I'm like, okay, that wasn't a trigger. Ooh, that one was, but it's learning that and I love how the framing of putting it in the emotional agility. This has been so fun. I want to just as we get ready to wrap up, you've shared so many great stories and insight, and I love the work you're doing. Is there anything else that's coming up for you for this audience? These are difference makers. They want to make an impact. Some of them are sitting in an office right now going, I think there's
Mhm.
more for me. Others are just witnessing changes in their coworkers or
Mm.
themselves in something they didn't ask for, a change in their corporate situation or their maybe home or family situation with work. What's your advice? What is something that's coming up for you right now as they're navigating change, navigating this crazy
Yeah.
culture we're in? And what is something you found that has helped you in those moments or in those seasons of life where you're trying to find your
Yeah.
authentic self?
Wow, so many things flowed through as you were talking, so
Good.
I'm gonna pick one. Um,
Yeah, pick
yeah,
whatever
so
comes
I
up.
think it's really important that we're really clear with ourselves about what's important to us. And it may
Mm,
be the promotion you want. It may be, whatever that is, but it's personal. So it may be
Mm.
exposure, it may be experience, it may be being able to be put on a project. Maybe it is becoming a leader in a different organization. Whatever that is, we tend to wait for somebody to tell us and to kind of tap on that shoulder, like be the path of least resistance. But there's opportunities when you're really clear about where you want to go. When there's somebody that's in the room that it would matter that they hear it, you can frame that to them. You can anchor an idea. You can help somebody see you a little bit differently. I heard at a leadership conference this woman who was in a C-suite go, I didn't realize until I was in this position that there's so many opportunities that don't fall in one place, and I don't know who to pick. So I pick people who
Mm.
raise their hand. And I thought,
Mm.
speak about that. Like, make your voice heard. Let people know what you want to
Mhm.
do and be really clear about that so that when you're in the elevator and you're suddenly in front of the CEO, you say, I really appreciate your leadership. And I know you don't, I'm in the organization. I really appreciate how you show up every day for us. I would love to let you know that I would just be honored if I could sit in on, the board meeting or be a part of this.
Mm.
Like, why not ask?
Yeah. Yeah. That's great advice and great and so encouraging. And I love that hearing that perspective from C-suite. It's like, yeah,
Yeah.
whatever's coming to me. I think once I heard something similar with a really powerful mentor. She goes, I don't go up to people and say, "Hey, you want to be mentored?"
Yes.
I wait for
Love
people to come
that.
to me and ask to be mentored, right? And just like you talked about somebody you had mentored and you
Yeah.
didn't even know it. So I think those are just ask, but I love the message of being
Mhm.
clear. And but not only being clear for for what you want, but being clear
Mhm.
internally about what's going on and what you need and
Yeah.
asking. So I love
This is
what
so
fun,
fun.
Susie. So fun talking to you
Yes.
today. I know, wasn't it fun? Well, you're just talented, and I'm so excited to have you on the show. And thank you. What is a way that people can get in touch with you if they want to find out more information about your products and about learning about negotiating
Yeah.
mindset
I
and
have a
some of the other
newsletter that I send out every week and just share personal stories and get you to think about how to shift that. You can go to negotiationlove.com because everybody should love negotiation. That's why it's love negotiation,
yes.
negotiationlove.com. And then I'd love for people to follow me
Uh-huh.
on LinkedIn and have a conversation there with me. Just find me at Susie Tomenchok. There's no other Susie Tomenchok, but um, there's one.
Just one,
It's a
just
little
one of you.
tricky to spell, but you can find
That's
it.
great.
Yeah.
That's right. Well, thank you so much for being here today. And thank you for sharing amazing wisdom. And I know our listeners are going to be reaching out. So
Thank you
thank
so
you for
much for
being
having me.
here.